Financial Services, along with economist Nick Loris of C3 Solutions. Congressman, your reaction to Janet Yellen, it sounds like she wants to wipe out tens of millions of U.S. jobs. Is it too churlish to say that she didn't Skype or Zoom the speech? She flew there?
Liz, it's depressing because
take a look at this devil, man.
Janet Yellen had a distinguished career in macroeconomics. She's the former chair of the Federal Reserve Board, and she's absolutely spewing nonsense in her speech at Detroit. It's completely unrealistic to say what she said, and it's misleading to the American people to think that we can snap our fingers and go from our important use of fossil fuels to renewable energy. She's completely
Shalom, giving all praise unto Yahweh Shai Bashim Makoah Kodash, double honors unto the apostles of Great Millstone, and honor your brothers that be pushing this truth in sincerity throughout the four corners of the earth. And above our body are coming out here to give you this truth for the grace and mercy of Yahweh Shai Bashim Makoah Kodash. It's going to be a relatively quick video. You can see the wind is changing, okay? The direction, the objective, the narrative is changing, right? We had the whole C-19 thing and they locked down the cities and whatever, right? But now they're locking off, or they're speaking about locking off the energy very drastically. And they're going to use all kind of geotechnological type things to try and achieve that agenda. And what I mean by that is they got programs like, what's this thing that they had now? I forget this tech that they had, where they can cause earthquakes and weather storms and all that kind of craziness. They ain't got no power over the sun, but they certainly could have. They certainly got the technology to have tsunamis, floods, and all kind of things like that pop off in order to justify the climate changing thing. And we know that's going to be a major component in having a situation where you got carbon credits and all kind of craziness, and you got to be monitored on a day-to-day basis in every facet of your life. So this is kind of like big news. This is kind of like big news when you see these different world leaders speaking about rationing energy and flattening the curve. This is the same rhetoric we saw last year, 2 years ago. They was flattening the curve, right? And all your civil liberties, they was taken away in the name of flattening the curves. All your civil liberties were taken away in the name of flattening the curve. Now, let me tell you something about that CO2 thing. It's nothing but BS, man. Okay? It's nothing but BS, right? You got trees. What do the trees breathe in? What do they synthesize in order to make energy? So you're going to reduce all of that. Well, you're basically reducing life on the earth, right? To put it in simplest terms. Let's carry on with this devil.
completely wrong about it. I know she knows better than that. She knows this is an evolutionary process that has to be driven by the market, not a radical revolutionary process done in the salons of Brooklyn.
You know, too, what the congressman is saying, Nick, this phrase is now coming back. It's being called flatten the curve on energy usage.
You hear that? Flattening the curve, right? So they got you acclimatized to civil liberties being taken away for the curve, right? We're going to flatten the curve. And all them lockdowns did, they destroyed the middle class, they destroyed businesses, and nobody benefited from that. You got a backlog here within the UK of thousands and thousands of people waiting for surgery underneath the guise of flattening the curve. It wasn't about no damn C-19. That was about control, right? Go back to the birthright between Jacob and Esau. What did Jacob get that Esau wanted? He got the birthright, which was the rulership and the control over the earth, right? Control means to have power over the people, right? Low-level minded individuals, they don't think like that. They don't think that control means anything. You're a low-level individual and you're goofing around through the earth. You don't want no power over people. You don't want no power over nations and kindreds and all of that. That's because you're a low-level thinker. Great men of old, the ancient men of old, they desired these particular things. But the Most High had a way it was going to pop off. The Medo Persians rose up. right? The Grecians rose up after the Medo-Persians, right? And so on and so forth, right? The Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Medo-Persians, right? The Greco-Roman Empire. All of these empires were men, mighty men in their own right? Mighty men in their own right that wanted control over the earth, right? To impose their will over the people. That's what it's all about. If you're a low-level thinker, you ain't gonna see these particular things because you're a low-level thinker. Because you've been trained to be, well, not trained, but you've been subverted. That's the word I'm looking for. You have been subverted, right? If you're a subverted individual, you don't think in terms of rulership. You don't think my people are not in power, therefore I need to do X, Y, and Z. See, we realize our people are not in power, therefore we go out here and push this truth so that the Most High is going to return. And like the disciples said, return the kingdom back onto the 12 tribes of Israel. Will thou at this time return the kingdom back onto the 12 tribes of Israel? Will you return control back into our hands? That's what the men of the Lord was on. You're talking about hasting in a day. You're looking for and hasting onto the rulership of your people. Okay? That's what this whole scriptural narrative is about. It's about rulership. Right? It's about rulership, not handing out daffodils and candy and all kind of bullshit like that, man. It's about rulership. And you can see this man, he's starting to show his fangs again. These loose narratives, nobody's really believing it anymore because the gig is almost up, right? The gig is almost up. He's getting sloppy, right? He's getting to the point where, you know, the narrative ain't really fitting, but they're still gonna use it, and they're gonna have a situation play out where it's just like, yeah, it doesn't even matter, because the end goal is to have control over everything, and they're gonna use these little minions, this ugly looking devil, to be the face of that. Let's continue with this video.
It's not just about the pandemic. Now it's about using energy. Watch the president of the European Commission. We broke this story last night. Watch this.
This is what is expensive, because in these peak demands, the expensive gas comes into the market. So
okay, let's go into what's known as systems, right? When you go into engineering, there's what's known as systems. Systems. This goes to show you this is bullshit. System, right, or system engineering is all about designing and the operational characteristics of a particular thing. So you can have the actual designer, right? The actual engineer could build the thing, right? But you can have a guy that's going to design how the system's going to run. This operates at this time, this operates this time, etc., etc., etc. So when you design an energy system, right? I'm not talking about the energy design. I'm not talking about like turbine blades and this, that, and the third, and you gotta make the pitch of the wind turbine like this in order for you to get this much energy. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about systems design. When you're designing the system for an energy supply, you design what's known as a damper within the system. And that basically makes it to where if there's peak demand at a particular point, if there's low demand at a particular time, you could balance that out with a damper within the system. Let's use springs as an example because everybody understands a spring. A damper within a spring is a damper within the system of, let's say, comfort in a car, right? So you want average comfort to be a particular level. Then you have your springs and dampers in order for you to be able to achieve that. Let's think of another thing. A water tank in a place where there's inconsistent water supply is a damper within the system. That allows you to have a situation where if you've got low water supply, you can tap into the damper, right, in the system in order for you to be able to maintain consistent supply. All of these countries have consistent supply because they have dampers within the system. So what's she talking about when she's talking about peak demand and all this, that, and the third? That doesn't make any sense. Right? They got gas, what's known as gas storage facilities. This doesn't make any sense. Right? This doesn't make any sense. Let's continue.
what we have to do is flatten the curve and avoid the peak demands. We will propose a mandatory target for reducing electricity use at peak hours, and we will work very closely with the member states to achieve this.
Nick, are we going to have climate shutdowns now? I mean, we have states already moving to regulate local energy use by seizing the control of people's smart thermostats like Google's Nest to set the air.
Now, you have brothers out there within the states, they was talking about how that they couldn't control their thermostat And this is what this whole smart business was all about. Again, another means of control. They couldn't control their air conditioning because it had the smart meter on it. So now you got a situation where you're trying to heat your home or cool your home, whatever the situation is, right? Trying to heat or cool your home, but you can't because why? Because you haven't got no control over it. The same thing that's gonna be with the cars, right? Them electric cars, everybody's gonna be wondering about. Yeah, you got the 200 miles or whatever that you can get out of it, but guess what? They could send an update to that and say, look, we're gonna cap off your mileage to 100 miles, right? That's it. You can't do no more miles than that. That's your cap. You're done. This is what's coming. This is what's on the horizon, right? All of this smart technology, your TV's gonna say, look, you've been watching the TV for an hour, you've used too much energy, I'm gonna switch you off. This is what's coming. Over the air updates. This is what's coming, man. This is what's coming to this society. Over the air updates, right? And they're gonna lock you off the grid. And we're sitting there with a candle.
Conditioning level, even locking them out of their thermostats, reportedly even moving to regulate how much water we use too. What do you think?
Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating. Just the messaging on energy itself, because energy is so important to human flourishing, and it's such a critical input to just about everything we make and everything we do. It helps us live our lives better. It helps the economy run. And so to think of energy as some sort of bad is very problematic from an economic sense. And then again, to force consumers to ration their energy use, especially, elderly populations who may not be able to live at higher temperatures. And so this is a real threat to human life. Consumers can make those decisions.
Now he made mention of a thing there. He said he mentioned the economy. Forget about the economy, man. That's a thing of the past. That's a thing of the past. All right, the time of, like Emmanuel Macron said, the time of that plenteousness, that's a thing of the past. You can forget about having plentiful. You ain't gonna have plentiful pretty soon. Right? That whole idea of working hard and then you can send your kids to college and you're gonna have what's known as upward mobility or upward social mobility. That's a concept for you to sit down and try to understand, right? How from generation to generation you could build yourself up. That's a thing of the past, yeah? That's a thing of the past. You can forget about that, right? They ain't concerned about the economy. If they was concerned about the economy, they would have kept the economy open for the last 2 years, okay? They're going to take that away.
On their own. I have no problem with utilities paying people to turn off their power if they opt to choose into it. But when governments and companies force that decision on consumers, that's when things run awry.
Yeah, Congressman, so this is happening in California. It's the 5th largest economy in the world ahead of France and India. It can't keep the lights on. It's rationing energy. It's going fully green and electric, but down to electric transmission wires, blamed for killing hundreds of people over the last decade and wiping entire towns off the map. They still don't have that under control. Final word.
The final word is California's energy policy is wrong, just like the policy in Germany is wrong. We need an all-the-above policy to make that transition, and trying to go renewable when you don't have adequate battery storage, you don't have the ability to transmission, leads to a disaster, and that's what we're seeing in California.
Nick, I'll give you the final word. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, it ain't about mitigating a disaster. They want the disaster. All right? They want the disaster. The disaster. This is a master of chaos. They want the disaster. They want the disaster. These whole narrative, the electric car and the smart systems and the shutdowns and all of this stuff and the rationing. There's a reason it doesn't make sense, because it's not supposed to make sense. It's not about it making sense. They don't need sense. It doesn't need to make sense. Chaos does not need to make any sense. But the agenda is going to be, they're going to achieve it to a certain amount. Job, the 20th chapter said, when he's in the fullness of his sufficiency, the Most High shall cast the ripe upon him. So Yahweh Hashem Yahshua, so that was of edification. I know I went through a plethora of different ideas there, but you got to get down with the get down, man. You got to get up to speed. You got to pause the video, check out the different, search out the different things that I've mentioned, and, ultimately you can get edified, right? So with that, I'm going to say, oh, praise unto Yahweh Hashem Yahshua, Hashem Kodash, double honors unto the apostles, a great millstone, and all your brothers that be pushing these truth in sincerity. Shalom.